Part 1, The Council's Despair, a beast too clever to catch. The Grand Chamber of the Interstellar Unity League was a masterpiece of alien architecture, towering crystalline spires pulsed with bioluminescent data streams, while the air hummed with the low-frequency vibrations of a dozen translated languages colliding in tense debate. High Elder Vorlon, his serpentine body coiled around the central podium, watched with slit-pupiled eyes as holographic projections displayed the latest devastation wrought by the entity known only as the Xyrix Predator. The footage was gruesome even by galactic standards. An entire research outpost on the fringe world of Cathis 3 had been reduced to a graveyard of mangled alloy and frozen blood spatter, the corpses of scientists and security personnel alike torn apart with surgical precision. What made the images truly chilling wasn't the violence itself, but the patterns within it. The Xyrix hadn't just killed, it had studied. Security feeds showed it pausing mid-rampage to dismantle a defensive turret, its six-fingered claws moving with eerie dexterity as it reverse-engineered the weapon's targeting system in real time. Elsewhere, it had bypassed a biometric lock by pressing a dead researcher's severed hand against the scanner, an act that suggested not just intelligence, but a twisted sense of humor. The chamber's mood was a cocktail of terror and frustration, the usual political posturing replaced by raw survival instinct. To Vorlon's left, General Kryth of the Kaldurian Armada loomed in his battle-scarred exosuit, the hydraulic joints hissing as he shifted his weight. "This is no longer a containment issue," he growled, his voice modulator flattening the words into a metallic snarl. "The Xyrix has breached 7 maximum security facilities in as many cycles. It's dissected our tech, memorized our tactics, and now," he gestured to a new hologram showing the smoking ruins of a military depot on Luna 5, it started arming itself. The image zoomed in on a makeshift blade welded from salvaged ship hulls, the edges honed to monomolecular sharpness. A murmur rippled through the assembled delegates, insectoid hive queen BZKTH's antennae twitched in agitation, while the avian diplomat Talus preened her feathers in a futile attempt to disguise her trembling. Then, from the back of the chamber, a voice cut through the gloom like a vibroknife. "Maybe you're all asking the wrong question." Every head turned as Commander Jace Rook shouldered his way past a pair of startled guards, his boots leaving scuff marks on the immaculate floor. He looked absurdly out of place, a human in a patched-up enviro suit, his dark hair streaked with engine grease and his left cheekbone bisected by a scar that still gleamed pink under the chamber's lights. In one hand, he clutched a steaming mug of what the olfactory sensors identified as coffee, a substance half the council found biologically offensive. "You keep calling it a predator," Jace continued, taking a deliberate sip as Vorlon's scales darkened in irritation, "but what if it's just hungry for something you ain't offering?" The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Hive Queen VZKTH was the first to break it, her chitinous forelimbs clicking against the podium. "You propose we feed it?" The derision in her voice could have melted Durasteel. Jace smirked. "Nah. I propose we talk to it." He tossed a data chip onto the table, and the holograms flickered, replaced by a grainy vidfeed from a derelict freighter near the Xyrix 9 anomaly. The footage showed the creature, a nightmare of corded muscle and iridescent chitin, crouched over the ship's disabled reactor. But it wasn't attacking. Instead, it was tinkering. Its claws moved with surprising delicacy as it rerouted power conduits, its elongated skull tilted in what could only be described as curiosity. "See that?" Jace pointed to a flickering holoscreen in the corner of the feed, where fragmented lines of code scrolled past. "It's trying to access the ship's logs. Not to eat, not to destroy. To learn." General Kryth's exosuit emitted a warning creak as his grip tightened on the podium. "Even if that's true, it's butchered thousands. You expect us to believe it's suddenly a scholar?" Jace drained his coffee and set the mug down with a thud. "I expect you to consider that maybe, just maybe, it's pissed off for a reason." He tapped another command into the holodable, pulling up classified files that made Vorlon hiss in alarm. Blueprints for Project Eclipse, a black site bioweapons program dating back to the first expansion war. The schematics showed a familiar skeletal structure, albeit smaller, hooked up to neural inhibitors. Meet Subject X9, Jace said quietly. The prototype. The chamber erupted. Talisa's wings flared wide, her beak clacking in outrage. You're saying the League created this thing? Not the League, Jace corrected. A splinter faction. The Xyrix wasn't born a monster, it was made one. And now it's hunting down everyone involved. He let that sink in, watching as the color drained from Vorlon's scales. So here's my plan. I find it. I show it this. He held up a second data chip, this one stamped with the insignia of a long-disbanded Black Ops team. And if I'm right, it'll listen. And if you're wrong? General Kryth asked, though the fight had gone out of his voice. Jace grinned, all teeth. Then I'll be the first human it kills with full context. The vote to approve his suicide mission passed by a narrow margin. Part 3, The Bond Forged in Fire, When Predator Becomes Protector. The ground trembled as the Xyrix circled Jace, its massive claws leaving molten imprints in the sulfur-crusted rock. The creature's bioluminescent veins pulsed erratically, casting jagged shadows across the canyon walls, a visual echo of its conflicted instincts. Jace held his breath, his fingers hovering near the emergency beacon that would call down an orbital strike as a last resort. But something in the way the Xyrix tilted its head stopped him. It wasn't just studying him, it was waiting. The realization hit Jace like a plasma round to the chest, this wasn't an animal. This was a soldier, just like him. A discarded weapon that had outlived its purpose. Slowly, he reached into his chest compartment and withdrew the one item the League had forbidden him to bring, a neural sync link, ripped from a dead scientist's lab on Cathus 3. The device was crude, jury-rigged to interface with both human and Xyrix synaptic patterns. If this worked, it would rewrite every textbook on first contact protocols. If it failed, his brain would be liquefied in seconds. The Xyrix recoiled as Jace activated the sync link, its claws flexing as if anticipating a trap. Then, with a shudder that sent cracks radiating through the ground beneath them, it lowered its head. Jace didn't hesitate. He slammed the link against the creature's browplate, the neural filaments burrowing through its chitin with a sound like shattering glass. Pain exploded behind his eyes, memories that weren't his own flooded his mind in a torrent of fire and screaming. He saw laboratories where the walls wept coolant, felt the agony of 1,000 invasive tests, tasted the metallic tang of betrayal as the ones who created him ordered his extermination. But beneath the rage, there was something else, loneliness so vast it could swallow stars. Jace gasped as the connection stabilized, his voice raw. You remember them. The ones who made you. The Xyrix's response wasn't words, it was a wave of imagery, emotions, intent. Jace saw flashes of a distant star system, a facility hidden in the corpse of a dead moon, and the faces of those who still lived. The creature wasn't just sharing its past, it was giving him a mission. Then the sky split open. The League hadn't trusted Jace to succeed. 3 drop pods screamed through the atmosphere, their impact kicking up waves of molten rock. Before Jace could react, the Xyrix moved with terrifying precision. It wrapped itself around him, its armored plates interlocking to form a living bunker just as the first plasma charges detonated. The heat would have vaporized him instantly if not for the creature's body absorbing the blast. Through the sync link, Jace felt its pain, scales blistering, muscles searing, but also its determination. Protect. As the smoke cleared, Jace's comms crackled to life. Target contained. Proceed with termination. The voice was General Kryth's. The Xyrix's roar shook the planet to its core. Jace didn't need the sync link to understand what came next. He grabbed the creature's claw, his own fury mirroring its own. Show them what happens, he snarled, when they try to kill us both. The Xyrix charged, Jace clinging to its back like some ancient warrior of myth. Together, they tore through the kill squad, not as predator and prey, but as something the galaxy had never seen before. Part 4, The Betrayal, A Web of Lies Unravels. Word count, 980. The hidden facility. Lyra and the Nexo-Beast, now nicknamed Rex, stood before the ruins of a clandestine research station on Luna 9, a moon supposedly uninhabited. The walls were lined with shattered containment cells, each large enough to hold a creature Rex's size. Scorch marks and dried biofluid stained the floors, telling a story of failed experiments and escapes. Lyra's stomach twisted as she picked up a discarded data pad, its screen cracked but still flickering with fragmented logs. Subject Alpha 9 exhibits unprecedented cognitive growth, recommends termination before it develops emotional attachment. Rex let out a low, guttural growl, his bioluminescent scars pulsing red. He remembered this place. The traitor among them. Back on the Federation flagship, High Elder Draven watched the live feed from Lyra's cam drone, his crystalline fingers tightening around the armrest of his throne. "She's getting too close," muttered a shadowed figure beside him, Commander Valen, head of Blackstar Operations, the Federation's most secretive military branch. Draven's form darkened to a deep violet. "We were supposed to control the Nexo-Beast, not let some human turn it into a pet." Valen smirked, tapping a command into his wrist console. "Then we erase them both. The incident on Luna 9 was never meant to be uncovered." The ambush. Lyra's comms crackled to life, Scientist Ivra's panicked voice cut through the static. "Lyra. The Council just ordered a sterilization strike on your location. They're calling it a containment breach, get out of there." Before she could react, the ground trembled as orbital cannons locked onto the facility. Rex let out a deafening roar, his instincts screaming danger. In a blur of muscle and rage, he shoved Lyra into a maintenance tunnel just as the first plasma round hit. The entire complex erupted in fire. The Beast's choice. Buried under rubble, Lyra coughed, her vision swimming. Through the smoke, she saw Rex, his hide scorched, one limb mangled, digging her out with his claws. His glowing eyes locked onto hers, and for the first time, she understood. The Federation hadn't just created a monster. They had created a slave. And now, they wanted to bury the evidence, along with her. Part 2, First Contact, the human who walked into the maw. The dropship shuddered as it punched through the turbulent atmosphere of Xyrix 9, its reinforced hull groaning under the strain of the planet's violent electrical storms. Commander Jace Rook tightened the straps of his impact harness, the servos in his exosuit whining as he checked the readouts on his wrist display for the 12th time. Outside the viewport, the landscape was a nightmare of jagged obsidian spires and rivers of molten sulfur, their fumes so corrosive they'd eaten through the ship's outer sensors within minutes of descent. This wasn't a planet, it was a wound in the fabric of space, a place where the laws of physics seemed to fray at the edges. The Xyrix hadn't chosen this world by accident. It had chosen it because nothing else could survive here. And that, Jace thought as he thumbed the release on his harness, was exactly why he needed to be the one to face it. The moment his boots hit the charred ground, the dropship's engines flared and it rocketed back into the storm-racked sky, leaving him alone with the wind howling like a dying animal through the canyon ahead. His suit's environmental system struggled to compensate for the toxic air, the filters clogging almost immediately with acidic particulate. He switched to internal oxygen reserves, the heads-up display in his helmet flashing warnings about the rising temperature, already hot enough to melt standard-issue armor. He'd ditched the League's tactical gear in favor of a modified scavenger rig, its outer layer woven from heat-resistant spider silk mined from the caves of New Bangkok. It wouldn't stop a direct hit from the Xyrix's claws, but it might buy him half a second to roll out of the way. That was all he'd ever needed. He activated the beacon on his wrist, a pulsing, rhythmic signal designed to mimic the distress call of a dying starship. The Xyrix had shown a pattern of investigating such signals, though whether out of curiosity or some twisted sense of mercy, no one could say. For 10 agonizing minutes, there was nothing but the scream of the wind and the occasional tremor underfoot as the planet's volcanic core stirred. Then, without warning, the ground rippled. Jace barely had time to register the movement before a section of the canyon wall detached itself and lunged at him. The Xyrix was faster than the footage had suggested. It moved like liquid shadow given form, its six-limbed body uncoiling with a speed that defied its massive size. Jace barely dodged the first strike, the creature's talons gouging a furrow in the rock where he'd stood half a heartbeat earlier. He rolled to his feet, arms spread wide in what he hoped was a universal gesture of "I'm not fighting you." The Xyrix paused, its elongated skull tilting as luminescent veins pulsed beneath its chitinous hide. It had no visible eyes, just a smooth, armored faceplate that somehow made its attention feel even more unnerving. "Hey there, big guy," Jace said, his voice amplified by the suit's external speakers. "Bet you're wondering why I'm dumb enough to land on your doorstep." The Xyrix didn't move. Jace slowly reached for the compartment on his thigh, the creature tensing as he withdrew the data chip. "I brought you something. A little closure." He slotted the chip into a portable projector and activated it. A hologram flickered to life between them, security footage from a black site lab, dated 15 cycles earlier. The image showed a smaller, younger Xyrix, its hide duller, its movements jerky with pain, strapped to an examination table as white-coated figures injected it with something that made its veins glow like molten metal. The reaction was instantaneous. The Xyrix shrieked, a sound that tore through Jace's bones like a vibroblade. It lunged at the hologram, its claws passing harmlessly through the light, then whirled on Jace with enough force to send shockwaves through the ground. He barely managed to trigger the emergency defense protocol in his suit, a burst of high-frequency sound meant to disorient, not harm. The Xyrix recoiled, its body shuddering as the frequencies interacted with its sensitive nervous system. For a heartbeat, Jace thought it would rip him apart anyway. Then it froze. Its head tilted again, and this time, Jace could have sworn it looked confused. He took a slow, deliberate step forward. "They hurt you," he said, keeping his voice low. "I get it. I've got a few scars from people who thought they owned me, too." He tapped the side of his helmet, retracting the faceplate to expose his own features, a gamble that made his pulse spike. The Xyrix leaned in, close enough that he could feel its breath, hot as a plasma torch, against his skin. Then, impossibly, it rumbled. Not a growl. Not a threat. A response. Jace exhaled, his breath fogging in the toxic air. "All right," he murmured. "Let's talk."